Oh, hey guys.
How's it going, guys?
Whew, man, trying to. Oh man, what a few days it's been, guys. We got 86 folks on here already. How about that? That's pretty awesome. Got a good crowd on here tonight.
Yeah.
Like to welcome everybody out. Got a lot of good memories from this past weekend. Some of the folks in the chat here were here. I see Gigi that was here, and I'm sure that we'll probably maybe have Jed, Bracken, and Glebe hopping on. Maybe Lee Fellows and some others from here locally. But we had a tremendous crew. But because we had such a fun time this past weekend, I thought we would focus on hunting a little bit tonight. But while people are hopping on, guys, tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods. Brian, to start with you.
Do you want me to tell you a sweet story?
A sweet story,
See
yes.
what he did there, Bruce?
As long as it involves honey. There's Grammy. Grammy was here. Lisa was here.
So I don't have anything sweet just yet. The colonies, well, the two of you know, and for everybody here that's watching, was it yesterday? Yeah, yesterday I learned a life lesson. And the life lesson is when the heat index is 105 and you have shorts and a t-shirt on, the best thing that you should do is go get your weed eater and try that next to the hives.
Because they're too hot to fly. They're too hot to fly, right? Is that what it is?
It's too hot to fly.
No, they were everywhere. So I fired that thing up, and literally I'm thinking within 5 or 10 seconds, I had like multiple on my left leg, right leg, hand coming at my face. I literally, the weed whacker went like that. I dropped it and I was gone. So life lesson. But you know, the yard, it's coming along. The bees are growing. I'll just say that. The one that has me just all out in shock, really, with how fast it's developing, is the old 3D printed one, actually. And I'm totally confused on that thing. Just, you know, I'll do short story, you know, here. It's a long story that I'm going to make short, but, you know, because I'm going to do a video on that thing. But they're building out really nice. The splits that I did, and I didn't even put a video out on the splits yet. I think that's coming out tomorrow. Those queens are fine. Everything's good. I got a couple colonies that I did find, though, that because we're like in the thick of it now as far as our honey flow, I hadn't been over there, like just because of rain and different things going on. I hadn't checked all of my colonies. Some of them it had gone like 2 weeks. And I open them up and I find cells. So it's some of the packages where they were just filled out, literally the deep that they had on and the super, every single frame had bees and they were using them. And I thought, oh my gosh. I mean, literally when I popped the cover on them, I looked and I thought, oh no. I mean, you know, right when you open them up, you're like, oh darn it, I'm going to be in trouble. And I did. I mean, I just started pulling frames. And when you pull an outer frame and there's nectar on both sides, I thought, yep, I'm in trouble. So I got, you know, extra boxes on literally everything. I think all of my colonies have 3 boxes on them now. The yard, you know, I've got actually some of my colonies, the newer ones, they are actually sitting on Endura Hive wax dip boxes because I don't have enough stands. So,
well, they would work as good stands too.
They work excellent. I mean, you know, they're no fuss, no rot. So I do have the board sitting out in the yard, though, that I got to make a couple extra stands, and then I got to run more fabric down, things like that. But the yard is just growing. You know, it's to the point where it's keeping me busy. So, and we'll know up here as far as the sweet stuff. I think I would guess in 2 weeks, I'm thinking I'll probably, and it's usually around 4th of July, in like there in the first week of July when we harvest up here. But from how things look, I'm thinking it's probably 2 weeks. So our yard, like if I look out at our yard, literally the entire yard is just clover. And the bees are like, I can sit there, I can walk through our yard and look, and there's bees everywhere on the clover. So it's good up here. I mean, right now it's actually pretty good. So I'm content, and for everything that I had for the winter and just where I was sitting at, I probably will end up. Oh gosh, what am I going to have? 22 colonies, maybe. Can't let all the cats out of the bag. And a little bit of a honey harvest. So things are going smooth up here.
Greg, what you got going on?
Well, 105 today with the heat index, and that's, it is what it is. It's, the hardest part down here today working bees is it happens a couple times a year, but well, I'll say it like this. I met an old farmer, 88 years old when I met him, and he was still running the dozer and running around and doing this and doing that, and just still had the tiger by the tail. And I asked him, I said, Bill, what is the secret? How in the world are you able to just, you can almost run circles around me at your age? What's the secret? And he says, well, that's easy. You have to just listen to your body. Well, that sunk in, and I'm starting to get smarter about that. But one of the hard parts with weather like this up here, it's happened a couple times today. I'm out there working in the yard, and then all of a sudden you just kind of get just a very quick onset of headache, very quick onset of like extreme nausea, and start to get a little bit lightheaded and start just to get a little bit dizzy. And I thought, okay, I need to go ahead and just stop for now. Of course, it's like right around 1 o'clock or so it's like peak heat, nearly peak heat. And so I just head back to the house, try to cool off, get some lunch, drink a couple quarts of water, and I think one of the big saving graces for me this year is that powdered liquid IV seems to help a lot. So use that a lot. So I drink a couple quarts of liquid IV, and just kind of got back at it. The bees in the morning right now, it is not pleasant working bees in the morning or the evening. Maybe we'll get a little bit into that a little bit later, but even when there's a little bit of a flow on in the morning when the plants aren't pumping, and in the evening when the plants aren't pumping, when you start cracking lids and exposing supers, you can have intense robbing start early in the morning and late in the evening. And you'll know it when you see it, because all of a sudden you'll just have these big groupings of bees that are just hanging right at where the lid meets the box, and they're hanging and they're swarming and they're hanging and they're plopping down and they're coming back on. And then a little while later they realize, okay, we can't get in there, and they go back. But so the name of the game right now for me is just to work through the rest of the colonies. We're just about through nukes going out the door. I've got maybe just a handful, maybe 20 or so left to go this weekend, and that's it. This past weekend, boy, we had folks from all over the country once again come for nukes, including Aaron Garrison and his family over in West Virginia, Honey Mountain Farm, and what just a great family. But I'm just those things are just, it's so rewarding when folks drive 3, 4, 12, 20 hours away to get 1 or 2 nukes or a couple dozen nukes to bring back to their apiaries, to have our lineage as a foundation stock for their bees and the bees that their customers will then have in the future. It's just we're so honored that folks would think that much of us and our bees, and it's such an honor to have this genetic line that we've worked on just out there. Even more so every single year. So right now, Bruce, we're just we finally got all the nukes cut out. I've requeened after I pulled the nukes. I've requeened all my yards. I've got maybe 30 or 40 colonies left that I'm requeening, and I'll probably finish that in the morning. And then we'll look at downsizing splits here in the next week or two, and get everything kind of split down and figured out what we want to do. Maybe make about 100 splits. And then we're done for the year. It's going to be cruising on getting the honey off, and then mite treatments, and then just kind of let them have plenty of time to keep building up. And then if we need to make any cuts at the end of the year, downsizing splits, we'll take it right there. But I guess right now I feel like I'm just getting whipped constantly by this heat. The flow seems to be tapering here. It was hot and heavy last week, but it's just they're not filling out those extra boxes that we threw on as an insurance policy. They're just not doing as much as I hoped with those. So we're chasing the weather, chasing the flow, chasing bees who don't like us being involved with them in the morning, in the evening, getting the splits out the door, getting the nukes out the door, getting our splits squared away, and somehow in all this still trying to find time and focus on queen rearing and set time aside for insemination this year. Just keep everything moving forward. That's the name of the game right now. Forward momentum is what I keep telling myself over and over and over again. Forward momentum.
Onward and upward. Just keep rolling, keep moving.
How about you, Bruce? You've had a pretty exciting stretch of events, haven't you?
Before I talk about it much, I will. Before I address that, though, I want to talk about the heat is an issue, and we had 3 guys come down from Utah that helped us out, and they obviously in Utah it gets pretty darn hot. It hits 100 degrees sometimes or more, but they have very little humidity, if any humidity at all. It rained a little bit on us to start the first evening. That was fun, pulling supers in the rain. But we needed to get some done Thursday evening because it wasn't raining hard. It was kind of just drizzling, and I thought it was going to blow over. Like lots of times these thunderstorms will just blow over quickly down here, but it just kind of settled in just like it was a light rain. It was like a drizzle. But of course, when it drizzles or rains hard, whatever the case is, it's the bees are home. And they were clingy. They didn't want to leave the supers. And so we pulled the first couple of bee yards that night. I think there were 60, 70 boxes, something that first evening. But then the next day we had a tremendous time, and I've got some longer form videos coming, but I just dropped a video last night on the YouTube channel, and I kind of have developed a motto, and I think it's something maybe we could all, I'd be totally game. You know how we've all kind of jumped on the hashtag Be the Lighthouse, hashtag all the people in the stream team group, and others have started utilizing that. You know, I think a theme that I kind of came out of this weekend was hard work, fellowship, and fun. That just describes that we worked hard, we were tired, we were hot and sweaty down here. Friday was a typical hot and humid Alabama day, and everybody was sweating like crazy. And then Saturday in the honey house, it was really hot and muggy in there as well. We did have a dehumidifier in there for the honey, and I think hopefully it helped a little bit with that. But Rusty, my partner, my friend, he told me there's no telling how many gallons of water ended up in the ditch down there that was pulled out of the air because it was very, very humid. But so we all sweated. We all just we had a great time. But I want to share this video with you. This is a kind of a little quick 3-minute overview, and it dropped on the YouTube channel. It's my most recent video, just dropped last night, but I wanted to share it here with everybody since I wanted to wait a little while and get some folks on here, and I'm going to share it for you. So if you haven't seen it, here it is. Hard Work, Fellowship, and Fun, the 2025 Honey Harvest. Here we go. Oops. What did y'all think of that?
Good stuff. Looks like you guys had a good looking crew there. Got a lot done in a short amount of time.
Yeah, we did. It was just phenomenal. We let's see if I can.
I have one question for you though.
Sure.
How did you harvest all that honey in 3 minutes?
I know,
You guys
man.
are moving like really fast.
Yeah, I tell you what, the time lapse thing really helps. That was just a brief overview. I'm going to try to get some more longer length videos done, like more typical videos. But one thing, when Greg first introduced that song, Western Call, on one of the first intros we ever did after the conference, 3 years ago, probably, or longer. I've loved that song ever since. And every once in a while, I'll put it in one of my videos. It's on Epidemic Sound is where I get it from. And every once in a while, I put it on there when the feeling is community, when the feeling is almost more of just a vibe I want to create with that, because that video, to me, that sound, that music just brings that out. And to me, that's what this stream team, beekeeping chat, just the beekeeping community, the Bee Expo community, whatever you want to call it, it's just, there is a community of beekeepers out there that are all about helping each other work and succeed. And I couldn't have done that without all the help that the people came. I talked to the guys that, really the team, like Lisa was there Saturday afternoon, and I'm like, she keeps coming back. So I'm like, I can't understand it, because I can understand people coming once, but when they keep coming back, then it's pretty darn cool. But there is just we work hard, we sweat, and we just get after it. But it's just, there's so much fellowship, and there's a camaraderie there that's incredible. And I hope that video kind of captured that. That was the vibe I wanted to get. Now, we had Bracken from Barker's Bees and Honey. We had Barker Bees and Honey. We had Bracken from Barker's Bees and Honey was there from Utah. We had Jed Smith there from Jed's Beekeeping. He's here in the chat. We had Utah Bee Man Glade Sessions came down from Utah as well. And all three of those guys, they just jumped right in with all the heat and the hot and sweat. We went through, on that day we pulled the supers. We went through, my son-in-law has a pretty good size Yeti cooler. And that thing was packed out with drinks, and we drank almost all the drinks in that thing. We were sweating so much, but we were able to get that done. And then while we were pulling honey, also Lee Fellows and his wife Tana came down. She was the one that waved at the camera in the video, and Lee was the one wearing the yellow veil. And then Gigi, aka Amy, came over from Mississippi and helped us extract on Saturday. So you see Gigi's in the comments here. And so it was really just a lot of fun, as long as we had quite a few we had local people here as well. Of course, Rusty was there, and just several local people from church and from the community, from family. Just had a great crew. We probably had, I think when we were pulling, there were 5 of us pulling that Friday afternoon. And then Saturday we averaged probably 12 people in the honey house all day long working on that. And there's Lee in the comments here. So a lot of the people, most of everywhere that was there helping us pull, and is on here tonight. So we just really appreciate it. I can't tell people just how awesome of an experience it is to have all those people show up. And at the end of the video, you see the ones that were left right at the end. A few people had to leave a little bit early, but they got us through the worst of it. But just covered in sweat and honey and everything else, just dripping, but just the smiles and the satisfaction was just tremendous. And so I'm hoping that everybody that helped me has recovered by now. I'm getting there. The other thing that happens is when my son-in-law Rylan came down, he's got an 8-foot bed on his truck, and I each we left the trailers down there with all the honey supers on them at Rusty's place, but we each loaded our trucks up, and I think there were like 60 or so, give or take, buckets on the 2 trucks for the first load, and we unloaded those, I think, Sunday afternoon. We just went ahead and got that done. Don't like to do much on Sunday, but we went ahead and did that. And then Monday, Rylan brought his truck down there, and I took my truck down there after work. And then my other son-in-law paid and brought his pickup truck down there. And we got all the buckets on pickup trucks. We got the 2 trailers hooked up to my truck and Rylan's truck, and we got them all out of there Monday evening. And without all the help, there's just no way I could do it. It's so much fun though. But anyway, Jed says I'm a top-notch recruiter. Anyway, but you see all the Utah guys in here, they all say it was a great time, and the Tennessee folks and GGL said it was a great time. So it was phenomenal. We ended up with 150 152 buckets, I believe, 151, 152 buckets. So it's over 9,000 pounds. I think it was 151. And then Don Bearden came through. Don's been in a lot of the chats over the years. He was out in Florida visiting family, and he came through here, and he bought a bucket on the way up of the freshly harvested honey. And and then I had 9 buckets for Honey Hills Farm. So we ended up with 160 or 161 buckets that we did in one day in that honey house. Now we've got the system working pretty well. Yeah, he said, Grant, he says, I came by and was scared of falling on the slippery floor. I couldn't stay very long. I was scared that hard work was contagious. Yeah, Don is awesome. Don has a few health issues. He can't, and he didn't want to get on that slippery floor. It was slippery, but that's another thing we figured out. Every time we harvest, we figure out a few things. One thing we figured out was that, about, I don't know how far we were into the day, but it was getting pretty slippery. And so Rusty kind of took a water hose, I think, or he took a scraper and or a squeegee or something and put a little water down there and pushed that honey in the drain. And then it did 2 things. Number one, it cooled it down a little bit in there with the water, a little bit of water on the floor. If you look in the video, you see it's pretty wet in there. A lot of that is, some of it's honey, but some of it's also kind of where we put some water in there, and it also made it less slippery. So we did that a couple of times, and that helped out. But the way we're set up, and I'm going to do more videos later, and if you've seen my previous videos, but we have a Cowan uncapper. It's one of the old original ones. It's like from the mid 70s, I think. That thing, it's got a new motor on it. Rusty put a new motor on it. It runs purrs like a kitten. It does such a great job. Awesome. And then we have the 2 extractors, 32 frame extractors. And as the honey comes out of the extractors, we have people on the other end of the Cowan that make sure all the cappings are off. They scratch them or roll them and make sure they're all off. And then we usually have 1 or 2 people handing frames over to the extractor loaders. And we got to where we could have 2 people loading the extractors at a time. That's what really the bottleneck is. If you have one person, it's kind of, you really they are Hilco extractors, and you got to kind of fit them in there just right. But we have people who got really quick at it, so we could fill those things up and get them rolled. The key was keep them rolling, keep them running. Everything worked well with those. And then we have a tank with some hop spiders in it with 600 micron, the screen, and there's 600 micron, and so it leaves the good stuff in and gets all the stuff you don't want in there out, the larger particles of wax and stuff. And then there was a guy, his name was Sean, and he just we kept that thing just open. We'd pour the buckets in there as soon as we could, and he kept those buckets piling up. We also bought a little actually at the expo, I can't remember his name, but it's from J.L. Apiary. It's just a little alarm that you put on the edge of the buckets, and it makes a beeping noise when it's full. And that saved us from running buckets over. So Sean was managing the buckets, and we just had a great time. Just a little description of our extraction setup. And then the end of the night, before we cleaned up, we moved all the boxes out of there. We'd already taken 1 load out, but we took all the rest of the supers out of the honey house out of one end. We carried all the buckets out of the other end, and they were sitting up out there in the grass, and where I took that picture. And then we just cleaned it up, and we were done. So I just can't thank everybody enough. Not only the people who were there, but also all those who have been kind of fans. They've kind of been, supporting us and interested in what's going on. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. And I hope the content that I put out, and I know Jed, a couple of those guys have put out some content. Glade put a time lapse of the Slocum Bee Yard. Jed put out a video about the experience, and Bracken, I'm not sure. I haven't seen if he's put one out. Maybe he has. I got to look and see. But I'm sure they'll all get some. I think he did. Yeah, Bracken put one out as well. He had one out, actually. He was the first one that put as he was flying out, there was a video that uploaded there as he was leaving on Sunday afternoon. See, all 3 of them, I think, put some videos out on it. So go check out their channels. But anyway, that's my story, and it was awesome, and I appreciate it. And so tonight, I thought we would talk a little bit about strategies for honey production. I know down here we're pretty much done. We are done with my operation with honey. Yeah, Don says you open the bucket of honey today, and the honey is great. Now, there's no more raw honey than that. We harvested it Saturday. He took it home to Birmingham, opened it up today, and that's about as fresh and as raw as it can get. And it is really good honey. So anyway, appreciate you, Don. But it's like it's rebooting or something there. The StreamYard was rebooting.
There you go. We got you back.
I know there are a lot of strategies for honey production, and a lot of things that people use to be able to figure out their honey production and maximize that honey production, as well as keep the bees healthy. And before we talk about that, I thought I would discuss one thing, a lesson I learned the hard way back in 2015. Back then, I'd been in beekeeping 2 years, and of course, we harvested a little bit. We weren't harvesting a lot back then. I didn't have many colonies, but I kind of thought I had it figured out. And so my goal was I think three colonies just down here at a friend's house here in the same neighborhood here in Dothan, and I'll mark some of these. I hope I don't. If you guys have questions or comments that you want us to talk about, just put them in all caps. And if we skip them, I'm sorry. We're going to try and answer some maybe towards the end. But down here, we have an issue with hive beetles, as most people are aware. And one lesson that I learned the hard way was my thought was I had ordered some queens from a friend up in Indiana from Tim Ives up there. And he was going to send them to me. It's hard to get queens from him. I don't know how I did. That's the only ones I've ever been able to get from him. But I went down there one day. My thought process was I'm going to leave the honey on these hives. So by the next year, they'll have that honey get through winter and my bees will be strong. And they had probably, I don't know if they were double deeps or deeps and meat. I'm not sure. I had them stacked up with at least probably a couple of honey supers, if not more, just packed out with honey. And I went down there. I remember it was the first part of August, like August 3rd or 4th or something like that, which is really not the best time to split bees anyway. The queens were coming in, I think, on August 5th or 6th, whenever that was. 6th is my birthday. So it was around my birthday, I remember. And one day I went down there. I kind of got them all set up. I was all excited to split those bees. And the next day I got my queens. I went down there to split the hives. And there was one of the largest swarms I've ever seen, about 40 feet up in a tree right above the hives. And there was a big slimy mess in at least, I think 2 of the colonies I had 3 down there. I believe 2 of them were just, the bees were basically gone. They had absconded. The other one it was going to happen. I mean, I did what I could to salvage them, but I was sick about that. And the lesson learned is, at least down here in the South, it actually is more beneficial and helpful to take the honey from the bees. You want to leave them enough if you don't want to have to feed them a lot, but you don't want them to have too much either. Down here, I think if they have about a super left going through winter, that's a pretty good amount. And so that was a lesson learned the hard way. And of course, all the honey was destroyed. The hive, 2 of those colonies were 2 to 2.5 of those colonies were up 50 feet up in a tree. Of course, I lost those bees. And so, that's something I think that a lot of people feel like, and maybe up north it's different. Maybe you guys have it different up there, but sometimes it's good to take the honey from the hives. When the tallow comes in down here, it comes in so fast and furious. You saw, I mean, when I do my later video, and you've seen some of my prep videos for the honey harvest, some of them have 4 and 5 supers on there. Way too much honey. And those hive beetle will get in there as the population of the bees decreases. Then the hive beetles have room to roam, and they can't keep them cornered and corralled, and they'll start laying eggs. And when those larvae hatch, it is one of the nastiest things you've ever seen. To me, it's the nastiest thing in beekeeping. It's worse than wax moth. It's just gross. And so it's important, I think, that we manage our bees, that we don't go to from them, and make sure we leave them a little bit if you want to do that, but they don't have to have, to be able to survive. I don't know why this thing tries to buffer here a little bit, but anyway, that's a little lesson I learned. So go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say that was one of the best views there. You kind of had this like puckered look.
What do you mean?
Weird when it was buffering
there. Anyway, all right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate that, Brian.
Hang on one second. Hang on.
I think you did that on purpose. Oh, my queen doll. I know where my queen doll is, but I don't have it here with me. It's out in my truck. See, I found it.
You got to dial it in.
So I guess we can kind of open up the questions. Anyone has questions or comments about how you manage your honey, but maybe we could start with you, Brian. As far as honey production strategy, what kind of things do you do? Like, I know this year has been a little bit more hands-on. You've had to. But typically, what is your strategy for maximizing your honey production? What are maybe the top 3 or 4 things you do to help maximize your honey production?
I'll tell you. So what I found really helped out, and it's a strategy that I started. It's probably been, let me see. Oh my gosh, it's been 3 or 4 years ago. Probably, yeah, almost 4 years ago now. It's my supplementing them very early. So now, we all pretty much know like what you do in the fall pretty much dictates a lot of what your spring is going to end up like. So, but I'll bypass the fall. Let's just say that you get them through into the spring. What I found out has really worked for me, and you end up really boosting your colony numbers so that you have that extra forage force that goes out, is it's using the supplements that I have. And it's all timing. Like I try and time it out so that, say, 2 to 3 weeks before like our initial pollen sources hit, I try and throw those supplements on just to kind of get them kick-started a little bit, so that they're just laying up a little bit more than what they would. And using those supplements, like with our weather that we have in Northeast Ohio, also, they can't forage a lot. There's times we have rain for 6 days straight. So using supplements has really helped out. Like, and now this year, I mean, I don't know what my honey crop will be like this year, but like what was it? 3 years ago, I had, and I'm small scale. I'm nowhere near pulling 9, 10, 11,000 pounds of honey. But like in my small scale operation, I had like 500 pounds of honey. Then the next year, 600 pounds of honey. So, and then now last year, it was just, we just got all out annihilated. But, there was weather and everything else. We had droughts and everything else. But the supplements really helped out. The queens, though, too. Like I've kind of been selective on where I get them. So I've been selective on the bees that I get. And I think overall, it's just like the management, giving them those supplements, maintaining those colonies. It's healthy bees are going to produce for you. If you're giving them what they need and you're maintaining them and not just letting them sit there, and I don't want to go down that road. And you all know that I could get fired up easily from emails and stuff that come through. But I won't go there.
Yeah, let's don't go there.
But I just feel like, hey, put a little bit of work in, and they're going to put in a little bit of work for you, and it's worked out for me. So, but that's just what I do here. I'm no expert. I'm no master. This and that lettered beekeeper. I'm just the Castle Hives hobbyist in Northeast Ohio, trying to keep bees alive and enjoy liquid sunshine.
Yeah, another maybe just speak briefly on as far as when you're adding your supers, under super, over super, queen excluder, upper entrance, no upper entrance, kind of what are a few things you do there to kind of help actually? Yep. What do you try to do to maximize honey? I think that all the systems probably work, but what have you found to be the most efficient way to add boxes, maybe, so to speak?
So now I switched last year. I've kind of transitioned over to single brood. And that's a whole entire other discussion. The whole entire reasoning for me transitioning from double deeps is what I was always, when I started out in beekeeping, everybody in Ohio, they just preached. They said, you need double deeps and you need 100 and whatever pounds of honey on them. If your colonies don't weigh 110, 120 or whatever pounds it is, they're going to die. So I just thought, oh my gosh, I got to have these massive colonies, going into the winter. And I found out you don't need that. I had a very late split one year. I went and visited somebody and come home, had to do a split, set that colony up. They overwintered in the 7-frame May. So you go from being told, and more or less those that you're looking up to and, your mentors are saying, hey, you need a double deep, to all of a sudden I had a colony that was 7 frames and survived. So I just got looking at, well, how can I make my inspections more efficient? So that's why I switched over to the single brood. Now, because I do the single brood chamber management, I do use queen excluders just because I want to know which box my queen is in. It makes it very easy then. If I go over and I'm just checking space for supers, I don't have to worry about a queen laying up there. It's very easy to go through and check them. As far as spacing, like when I see that flow is starting to kick in, because it is single brood chamber, you have to stay ahead of them like there is no tomorrow. The other day was classic example when I went over to check. I hadn't been able to check them just because of weather and things like that. Like we had, Greg, what was it, like 5-6 days straight of rain through Ohio? Nasty. So I just couldn't, I didn't have time to go check them. Between the 9 to 5 job and then rain in the evening, I didn't have time to check them. I go over, and because I have a single deep and then I have a medium on there, they were backfilling and I found cells. So, I learned there that probably moving forward, because this is my first spring with single brood chamber, probably going into the future, when I add that very first super, I'm going to add 2. It's just, you got to stay ahead of them. And then like now, like one of my survivor colonies that I added boxes to, I always under super. And if folks don't know what that is, like when you have those filled out supers, I think I have a picture here somewhere. I'm going to do this the new fandangled way. So that's a prime example right there, where the lighter colored box, that third one, was the brand new super that I had added on. Those other 2 were completely filled. So when I wanted to add that box on, instead of putting it in the top, I have found, at least for me, that it's always worked by under supering. When you have those other supers that, yeah, they're filled out, but they're still working on capping them, by under supering, the bees they're going to go up because they want to finish off those boxes. So then it just helps to get them up into that super that you added on. What I also found out has worked really well, and I think you suggested it last year, I do that little teeny shim opening staggered on some of my boxes. So that way they have that upper ventilation, and it's worked out really well for me. It's not, and it's amazing in that you'll go over and you're thinking, okay, well, if you leave a space in your supers, like Greg's saying, once the flow starts tapering off, you'll get into those kind of squirrely situations. You would think those boxes are just going to get annihilated. You're going to think it's just those colonies will adjust and they'll use those spaces as entrances. They don't. And I was kind of leery at first when I started staggering my supers like that.
They love it.
They love it. And literally you go over and look, and you'll just see them lined up across there. There's no bees flying in and out. They're lined up on there, and they're basically turned around, fanning, and they're using it just to pull that moisture out. So it's
gotta be
really well. Yeah.
Good deal. Greg, what about you? I know that you focus a lot on bees and making bees, but when your people that you're mentoring are kind of trying to help, with your business, kind of helping walk them through the process, people who focus on honey, what strategies would you recommend to them to be able to maximize their honey production? What do you tell them?
Yeah, well, we practice what we preach. So what we're sharing with our learning yard folks, or what we're sharing here, this is some things that we do that we have found that makes a pretty big difference. You've got, let's start all the way back with the bees. Brian already mentioned, you got to have healthy bees first and foremost. You got to have bees that are squared away. They've got a great performing queen. That's how everything starts. From there, there's a difference between the productivity of an overwintered colony versus a spring colony. Spring colony could be a spring nuke that you bought, could be a package. Those can perform. And as Brian is seeing, and as the vast majority of our package customers have seen, the way the season lined up this year for the package bees was absolutely beautiful for the bees to build up and get to a certain size as these flows are coming in. So one of the big things that we've tried to really dial in is making sure that we get the correct amount of bees in the boxes if we are going to produce honey with them. If we have a 10 frame single with 4 frames of brood, that rascal's not producing honey. If we get a 10 frame single that has 8 frames of brood, probably not going to be producing honey yet. There's this balance between which box do you add next, and that does play into how productive the colony will be for honey. And it's just a numbers game. It is literally just a matter of bee bodies and timing and making sure that you have older, more mature field force bees in that box to go gather and do all that work. All that to say, Bruce, what we have found is that if we really want to put honey away, there's 2 configurations that seem to really do it very well for us. That is double deeps that are jamming, where we've got 12 to 14 frames, absolutely just jammed, packed with bees, and they can have some that they're kind of growing out on. But I really like to see about when we have colonies that have 6 to 8 frames of brood in both boxes. Those are the ones that just really lay it away, because now we can start to put that honey super above, and we let them go up into that honey super and start to draw that. When they draw it, now we'll shake everybody out, put an excluder in between. Now mama's got 2 10-frame deep boxes that satisfies the brood nest. And then what we see is they start to clear out some of that nectar and go above with it. And by and large, that works out really well. The other way that we do it is a story and a half. So a 10-frame deep box that's just jammed full of brood. It might even have 8 frames of brood in that bottom box, to the point to where they're lean on nectar. We add that second box and we bring up the brood right into that second box right on top of there. So that brood can then hatch. When that brood in the second deep hatches out, by that time, the first box now is jammed wall to wall. There's a nice brood height into the, like, halfway up into that double deep. There's a honey band on top, and then everything from there, they just go. So right sizing the boxes with the brood you have in the box really does make a big difference. But also forecasting the age of the bees that are going to be in there to do that work is such a big deal, because if all you have is young brood getting ready to hatch, you will have boxes that are full of bees, but they're not producing any honey because they don't have that field force yet. So getting the colony to kind of mature, to have the field force activated on the time of a flow, it is nothing short of an art form. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes that we don't. But I am a really big fan of using excluders the right way. So double deeps I really like. Story and a half works great. That third box going up is a medium, so it'll be a deep, medium, medium. Typically, for the most part, that third box, that second medium, typically without an excluder, they have a tendency of just having that as a honey box. Then we can start stacking boxes up. From there, though, I go both ways with this every year, and just to make sure I'm seeing what I think I'm seeing, or I'm not getting too biased. But what I really do prefer is the under super here in Ohio, because the flows, they can come on hot and heavy, but then they can just turn off like that very quickly. Why I like to under super is I've got 2 preferred methods of getting the honey off. And if I have the time and I've got, even if it's just 1 or 2 supers to take off, I love our wax dipped triangle bee escapes. They work beautifully. If you have the time to get out to the yards to set those, for every honey super, a medium box that you have there, one day with the escape on seems to empty that out. So 1 or 2 days ahead of time of when you want to pull, those bee escapes most of the time get out 90% of the bees. And then with just a quick portable blower, you can get the rest off there quick, and you can get those boxes off. My absolute favorite way, though, is a fume board with honeybee gone. I got a video coming out this week. It is my go-to. It is just so easy. And this is the reason why I like to under super. Brian's calling a timeout.
I'm out here. Everybody, you heard it right here is a video coming out.
The reason I've got a video coming out because it's already shot, it's already ready. I could just simply just put it out right now. That's probably what's going to happen. No glitz, no glamour, it's just going to be probably pretty raw. But that's why I like to under super, because if we don't get a long prolonged flow, right, I can move the box that is already 90% done. I can move that to the top. I can slip a box underneath for them to work on. And then when I want to circle back through everything and start pulling off top boxes, when I pull that top box off, you crack open the lid, you spray your fume board with the Honey Bee Gone. The fume board goes right on the top of that stack. And then 5 minutes, sometimes even less, especially on a nice sunny day, that top box is cleared out. When you go to pull that top box off, you're now quickly looking into the bottom box. And when you have enough experience, you look into that box without even cracking a frame and say, okay, there's honey in there where there's not. If you think there's honey in there, you can quickly pull right into the center and check and see if it's far enough along. Right now, okay, I got another box, fume board back on, and boom, you can pull that off. If you look down in there and they're still working with it, they're still fooling around, it's not ready, it can just stay on there. No big deal. If you over super, however, and you've got a 1 or 2 boxes on top and you're just throwing boxes on, you got to take off all of those to get to the honey box, which are directly on top of all of the massive bees below that. When you start cracking that box off, you start to get a lot of bee flight, a lot of clouds of bees. So for me, I like to under super. It has a tendency of reducing the amount of bees that are in the air, bees that are on the frames, and then using a fume board is just so fast and effective. That's my go-to way, and it's not real labor intensive. Using a fume board, this somebody you can do by yourself. If you've got 2 or 3 fume boards, that's all you can. As fast as you can put the fume boards on, you're pulling those supers off. You can upscale that if you've got 1 or 2 helpers. Boom, boom. It really goes quick. But that's a brief synopsis of the configurations that I like and how I get that off. So Honey Bee Gone, I know Bruce, you turned me on to that one a couple years ago after one of the what were we using? Honey Bandit catastrophes.
The Honey Bandit or Bigo?
Oh no, it was Bigo. If there was
ever
a time where we were,
I think Honey Bandit smells similar to the.
It's Bigo. No, it's and the fact that if there was ever a time, fellas, if you want to test, scripturally, what God joins, let no man put asunder. It should say, what God joins, let no Bigo put asunder. Because when you get that on your boots and your pants and everything else, it's over everything. And that just very hot peanut butter vomit smell doesn't leave for an entire year on whatever it touches. It's nasty. And so Honey Bee Gone, we started using that, and now we have that by the gallons. We have Honey Bee Gone here in the shop. Everybody loves it. It's on our website right now. It's just, you can't beat it. It smells, I dare say, actually smells good.
It does. That's what we use. And Mike Berry, I know he's been pulling some honey, and he says that he prefers the Honey Bandit over the Honey Bee Gone. I haven't tried the Honey Bandit. I think it's a similar smell, but I may compare the two maybe next year. But I've used Honey Bee Gone for years. Now we were tested in this past honey pull last week because it was rainy that first evening, and it worked okay, but it didn't work near as well as it did the next day when it was hot and sunny. But when it's raining, the bees were real clingy. They didn't want to get off the frames, and it was getting in the evening time. It was getting dark, and so I don't know. I think Bigo works on anything, but can you blame the bees? I don't. Yeah, that stuff is so gross. But anyway, as far as my operation, I don't have any set favorite configuration as far as I kind of just. I make splits in, fairly early in the late winter or spring, and then I kind of just watch them and see what they do. And when I sense that we're starting to see white wax, the flow is starting to come in, I start adding honey supers, and I put them on initially without queen excluder. And say it's the split that I made in February or early March. Sometimes those take a little while to get going, and so they might just be getting into a single deep. So what I did this year was I had several that some of those queens from Zach that I just ended up putting a queen excluder on over that single deep because they weren't fully developed yet when the honey flow started to hit. And so I made, I think, 5 boxes of honey on some of those that I did that too. But I kind of prefer, my favorite configuration is like you, Greg, a double deep packed out with bees, but it doesn't always work out that way. And so I kind of just monitor over the years. I've kind of learned, and I kind of just have a feel for when to start putting honey supers on. And even when you do that, sometimes they don't do like what you think they're going to do. And they might, whether they have queen issues, whether they swarm, you never know exactly. You're going to have something to do that with as many colonies as I have. I know some of them swarm every year. My swarm management is not my forte. I just, many times when they swarm, they just requeen. And I think I've had a lot of young queens over the years because they probably swarmed. But a good strong colony, honestly, will just keep rocking and rolling if they're really strong. Some of these are packed out the way mine are. I don't think they hardly skipped a beat if they swarmed. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But a couple things I do. I start adding the honey supers on initially without queen excluders. I let the bees start going up there and working the honey supers. I've got a lot of comb. And so I obviously, if you want to make honey, comb is gold. And so I put it on there. I'll let the bees start working it, get them up in there, get them used to it. And every once in a while, that queen she'll mosey on up in there and start laying eggs. About 3 to 4 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before I want to harvest that spring harvest, preferably about 3 weeks before I anticipate harvesting the spring harvest, I go in and I shake all the bees out of that super, and I put a queen excluder in there. And, and then I just put the box back on there. And what happens is, in a good flow, the brood will emerge and they'll just put honey in there. So it works out fine. I just start monitoring them. If it's a super strong hive, I might put 2 supers on. But most of them, I put 1 on to start off with. And I just kind of watch them and see how they grow. Now, initially, when I put that first honey super on, I always put a little stick under the edge of the lid. I like there to be that upper, I don't know if it's for ventilation, I'm not sure why, but I like there to be some sort of a opening up there. And also, if you have any drone brood in those supers, they can't get through the queen excluder. And so if you have a little opening up there, the drones can get out of that. Also allows them to get out of the colony if they need to, which they will. They'll want to get out of there. And so then as they start to fill that up, somebody's not happy. Can you hear him crying? Anyway, but then when I put the second box on, I stagger it forward like Brian was talking about. You guys hear my grandson crying in the background?
Hey,
Hold on a second.
It's all right. It's all right. Look at that. Like, Grandpa Bruce is going to go lay down the law. That's what's happening right there.
Okay, now, he's not right at the door anymore. So then go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I'm almost thankful that I haven't been lured into this honey operation, because I'm seeing like Grammy, she got injured and I didn't hear anything. It's like, just write her off. She was here. She got hurt. Go on your way. And now it's like the grandchild's crying. Let me go fix him. Did you notice, Greg?
I think his dad took care of it.
He just turned around and gave a look, and the whole house went quiet.
He didn't. He wasn't in here. He must have had it may have been a telepathy or something. But when I had that second box, I do stagger them forward. There's about probably 1/4 inch, maybe to 1/2 inch. Doesn't really matter. I usually stagger it forward a little bit. You can go backwards. Doesn't really matter. And that allows those bees, like Brian described earlier, they just love that. I don't know. It just works well. Someone told me years ago, they said, if you have an upper, because I was having a hard time getting bees to come up through the queen excluders when I had them sealed off really good. And someone said you have to have an upper entrance. And when I started doing that, I really haven't had issues with queen excluders since then. The old adage used to be a queen excluder is a honey excluder. And what I used to notice was some hives didn't have any issues at all with it, but other colonies just wouldn't go through it, it seemed like. But I'd have bees that would stay below the queen excluders and just almost swarm before they go up through that queen excluder. But since I've started creating some sort of an upper entrance or upper ventilation, whatever they're doing with it, I don't have that issue much. The bees just seem to just rock and roll, especially if you let them get up in there for a little while first. And then I just monitor them as the honey season is going along. I just I bring some supers out with me. I just have it in my truck or my trailer. And as I feel like they need it, I just, if the box is about full, I just slap another honey super on there of comb, and I just keep stacking them up. And then this year, if you saw, I actually did a video on this. I kind of did a little better with this year than I usually have. I'm not sure if I've ever done it exactly like this before, where I just crack the lids on the hives, and if I see one that's got like a super or two stacked above a queen excluder and they're not doing anything in it, and then I got a colony on the next pallet over that's just packing it in, and the lid is stuck. I can barely open the lid up. They're so full. Why would I leave that one that they're not doing anything with on that hive? I take it off. I put it on the strong one. So I call that robbing the rich and giving to the robbing the poor and giving to the rich, and it works extremely well. This year, I think I probably added maybe 15 to 20 supers at least by doing that to my harvest. They did real good with that. Another issue that a lot of people who are new in beekeeping may have is when they don't have a lot of comb to slap on their colonies, how do they get the new foundation drawn out? And I think a couple things are key, and I'm going to let you guys talk about that a little bit too. Brian, what would you say to someone who is a fairly new beekeeper if they're just getting started? How do you get that first comb drawn out? What kind of strategy would you use?
Oh, man.
That's the most difficult, one of the most difficult things. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if they don't have, if there's not a lot for them to forage on, I mean, you have to feed them. If you're not going to be pulling honey, what harm is there in feeding them? Absolutely none. So feed them, and that's something that I always do early in the season. I just up here, it's pretty much as soon as I can, just because our weather's so crazy. But as soon as I can, I get those buckets on. That way they have that.
Yeah. Well, Greg, you see videos of people that do instructional videos, how-to videos for new beekeepers. You also read the books, and they typically say you get your package or your nuke of bees, you put it in your deep box. Typically is what most people do. Just say what most people do and recommend. So they say once that deep box gets about 80% to 90% full of bees, the frames are drawn out for the most part, you add the second box. And a lot of people will say in a first year, maybe even just add the queen excluder and then a medium. Or if you want the double deep, you may not get honey that first year. But so you hear that strategy, whatever your brood configuration is, put a queen excluder on and the box of foundation above that, and then just wait till it's 80% drawn out and full of bees, and then you add another box. And that's kind of the strategy they recommend you do. What kind of tricks would you have people use, tips or tricks, to be able to get that first box of medium of basically a first medium super drawn out? What would you tell them to do?
I think the secret to getting the medium filled out is to make sure your brood box is filled out first. Your bottom brood box, or if you're in doubles, if there's enough time and you can get into doubles, that double will pay dividends. It's unbelievable. And you're talking about not just having one honey super to harvest, you get into a second and a third box when you are into double deeps. The issue that a lot of folks run into is, yes, their bottom box might get 70 or 80% full, and then they just simply add a box on top. And you can do that. And that does work. However, what I have found, I'm always trying to look at my unit and my asset, and then what can I do to have a quicker growth rate. What I have found is a very simple trick. Is when that bottom box is jammed out and we've got, let's say, 6 to sometimes even 10 frames of brood, it happens. I'll pull at least 2 or 3 frames of capped brood up into that middle of the second box. And then I may even checkerboard that with a fresh frame, with fresh frames, and then fill out the rest of the box there. For me, what I see happening is the bees then emerge in that second box. Or even if you bring it up when it's older larvae, just ready to be capped, a little bit of open brood, not eggs, but just open. Now all the nurse bees, everything is up in that second box on their own to take care of the brood. When the brood finally does hatch, it's populating up into that second box area. But what you've done now is you've said, okay, I've got capped brood here and I've got a capped brood here frame. I'm going to split that, and we're going to put a fresh one in between. Now you're almost guaranteeing you're going to have those 3 frames of brood in that second box. Now you're getting the population that's going to be going in the right direction. That is the secret to getting this, in my opinion, to getting those next boxes drawn, because now for every, as you guys know, and so the listeners here, but every frame of capped brood that you see is going to turn into 2 frames of bee coverage. Very quickly, you're going to start seeing a lot of bees in those boxes when you do it that way. What that also does is it keeps the bottom box, the brood nest, freed up. So mama can now, she can freely move from the first box, second box, first box, second box, keep the brood where she wants. And what typically happens, they'll put that honey band right above the second deep. Everything from there on up goes into honey storage quickly. But the secret for me is to go ahead and put that box on first. If it's brand new comb, go ahead and put that box on with no excluder. Because what we typically see is once that second box is filled out and they're putting that honey band above the brood, they've already said anything here up's honey. When you put that second, or when you put the third box on now, which is your first honey super, a lot of times they draw it out to Timbuktu as fast as they can, and they are storing nectar away as fast as they can draw it with no concern of brood or eggs being up there. So that's my big secret is don't rush it. Work on getting the brood ratio correct first, then start adding those supers. If you go the other way around and you say, okay, I'm only going to try to keep them into one box and then I want honey above, you can totally do that, but you have got to be on your toes because you still got to get that first medium box drawn. So you let them get up into that box, you let them start to draw, but she's going to go up there and lay eggs. It's going to happen. So you can either let that first honey super be a brood box and then you go up from there, or you shake the bees out, then you put your excluder on. But sometimes they still don't want to draw. There are these weird little windows. Bruce, maybe you have them. I know Brian and I have them here in Ohio. But you can have bees that they will not take any time to draw comb. Doesn't matter what the foundation is. They'll take no time to draw comb, but they will go to town putting burr comb everywhere very quickly just to store the incoming nectar as fast as they possibly can. It's quicker for them to make a mess with things to store the nectar than it is to go up and then draw out the comb to store the nectar. That happens. It's happening right now for a lot of folks in Ohio. I think because I don't want to say this, but I don't wonder if our flow has already peaked and we're on the downhill swing of that now because we're suffering the last 3 days with a lot of backfilling in the brood nests. They don't want to go. They don't want to go anywhere else as soon as there's emerging brood because the brood picked up so heavy. Now, as soon as that brood's emerging, they're backfilling those the brood nest very quickly, and they're not as concerned with surplus storage right now. Why they do that, I don't know, but it can be a real challenge.
I know I run into a lot of that every year, but I don't really go down into my brood nest much once I start stacking honey supers. And I typically tend to over super with comb. They typically go up pretty quickly with foundation. I'll under super at least under the top box, especially if the top box is full. But
I'll say though too. So set aside, and I've seen this very firsthand, and this is why I probably am not going to take any other offers from companies that say, hey, try out this Hive setup. I had a package that I installed into a Hive setup that when I installed the package in, okay, it went on drawn comb that I had from prior, okay. I put on a super, the super that they had sent to me with 10 frames from that company. I didn't, just to give them the benefit of the doubt because they said they were heavy waxed and things like that. I didn't re-wax. I didn't do anything. I thought, well, okay, they said it's heavy waxed. I'll trust them. It's heavy waxed. That super was on for probably 2 weeks. They didn't touch it.
Yeah.
The deep, they were backfilled and I had cells. So the equipment that you use, it's very important because if you have subpar equipment, you're going to enter into this NASCAR race of a honey flow, and you're going to have a Chevette with a motor that's never been tuned up, and it's just going to fail right out of the gate. You're going to have no chance to build comb, to make honey.
Yeah, I agree. I think a couple things from the conversation here. I do over super, but like I say, if I've got new foundation, I've learned a lesson a little bit the last couple of years. A commercial beekeeper here locally he basically has gotten out of the business now, and he had several boxes of Pureco medium frames that were just standard waxed, which I've had okay success with that before in the past. That was, I think, 3 years ago when I bought that, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Last year, I used some of that and it worked fine. If you hit it on the right flow. 2 years ago, I used some of it and it worked fine. So it must have been 3 years ago when I got it. I'm a Pureco fan. I've used Pureco before, but I usually, when I order double. I usually order triple waxed actually, and they draw it out really well. Last year I used a few of those. I think some of them got drawn out, but I put some of them on a little bit late, and they didn't really touch it because it was kind of late in the season. This year I put them on during the flow. Some of those same frames, some of the same boxes I used last year, and they went wonky on me because I think the bees would probably pull whatever wax was on them off. And then I put some of them on this year, fresh out of the box. But these frames are probably 4 or 5 years old now, and they were, waxed and everything. They still smell pretty good. But so if I use those frames next year, which I still have about 3 or 4 boxes of them, I think, which is what, pushing 300, 150, 300, probably 250, 300 frames of frames I got for a really good deal. I will re-wax those. I'll put a wax coating on just because it's been so long. I do know too that a lot of people probably in the chat here recommend re-waxing those frames before you put them on any frames you get. I will tell you this: I've had good success with the Pura frames, the heavy wax Pura frames that I got from Greg this year. They've drawn them out with no problem whatsoever. And I'll tell you one of the most incredible things I've ever seen is those infinity frames I put on. It was let's see, maybe 19 days before the honey harvest. Put them on there. It was late in the flow, and we pulled that box, and they had honey in there, and it wasn't completely capped, but it was close. I mean, they had capped a lot of it. It was ready to go. We did that. I think if I'm not mistaken, Jake could tell me. I think Jake can tell me. I think he's in the chat here. He has been. I think we did the shake test on it, and it was fine. So, and someone else asking here if they worked well in the extractors. I got to be honest. I'm sure they did, but I don't remember. We were moving so fast. I'm not even sure when they got extracted. Nobody said anything negative about them. They were so heavy duty that they're tougher than wood and any other plastic frames, I'm sure.
How did they work out, like with your the uncapper and everything, like that Cowan and that they run through fine?
I think they're fine. I didn't actually see them when they went through, but I mean, if wooden frames and if those flimsy, black Pureco frames that I have, they're not super flimsy. If those will survive, then those things will survive that. I'm sure. I didn't have any. We only had a very few frames that got messed up with the uncappers, very, very few, and none of those were involved with that. So, but anyway, that's kind of, I like to over super. I like to monitor it and just take some boxes with me on through the spring and add and move boxes here or there. Keith Spillman's in here, half tracks and honeybees, and Keith has had, I think, 5 extractions this year. He's been right on top of me. He's been doing a few boxes at a time, and he's ended up with a really large harvest for the year. And it's been fun watching his story. But I think people are so worried, so concerned. I think when I look at my beehives in the springtime, people get so worried about swarming, and swarming does happen. But if I open a beehive up, if it's a strong established colony, I want to see bees like covering the frames. Like if I look in there and you can't see any bees at the top, then I don't add the box. To me, it needs to be full of bees. That's kind of going back to your point, Greg. If you've got like bees on, even if the bees are kind of on 6 or 7 frames, and you look down and you see the bees down in there, but they're not just all full in the box. To me, I think if you give them too much space, it almost shuts them down sometimes. Like they just don't want to work as much. And I think it's critical what you said too, Greg, about pulling a frame or two up if you're going to a double deep. The box above is the same size. Even if it's honey supers, you pull a frame up, that'll help. But we could talk all night on this topic, but there's so many strategies, and those are just some things I thought we would share with you guys as far as how we do things. We have quite a few comments and questions I'd like to address. Before we do that, I do want to do a giveaway. Brian, I had a friend of mine here at church that made me some t-shirts, and the first of these were given out at the honey harvest this week. Everyone that came and helped with the honey harvest got one, but here's the front. It's got the little brucesbees right there. Here's the back. It's kind of cool. I don't know, kind of fun. And then on the left sleeve, we have the American flag with the stars. We got thunder. You hear that? That sounded looked like it was right here outside my window here, but we got the flag with the stars facing forward. So I'd like to give away a t-shirt, Brian, if we could put in a hashtag t-shirt or hashtag something there and give one of these away. And so let's just go ahead. Yeah, that's fine. Hashtag Bruce's Bees. Make sure you spell it right. Bruce's Bees. Put that S in there, because if it's Bruce Bees, it won't work. So Bruce's Bees. Go ahead and toss it in there to win a t-shirt. We'll go ahead and keep talking for a few minutes. Then we'll do the drawing here in a little while. So any further comments, guys, to kind of close up the little honey talk here, and then we'll kind of go to some of these questions and comments here. If you'd like to. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
I'd say just be mindful of your brood nest. The only reason that I dig into my brood nest right now is some colonies we've actually managed to pull 1 or 2 nukes out of, and they're still making honey, which is not real common. I'm always checking to make sure that she's got room to lay down there and that they're not backfilling, because if they start to go into this backfilling mode and then they stop working the honey supers, for me, I start to transition out of my supers and get those put on other colonies who can do something with them, and then just get that colony transitioned over to making brood. I pull the brood up to give them more room so they can put nectar on the outsides, brood down the center. If you don't do that, and if you're not paying attention to the brood nest, what can happen very, very quickly is if the flow does come in, or you get a little minor flow for 2 or 3 days, as fast as the bees are emerging, they'll start backfilling those areas. If that goes on too long, you'll end up with boxes full of bee bread, pollen, mixed with honey. Every single deep frame, and they will crowd out all the brood, and very quickly the colony starts to diminish in size and go downhill fast. They can sometimes even go into supersedure mode and put these goofy little queen cells in the absolute worst possible places and supersede because mama's not making any brood. So just be mindful. It takes a couple extra steps, but it's a way that we can make sure you're keeping as many bees in your box and moving forward at the same time, especially if you're living in a part of the country that's got a narrow honey window like here in Ohio. We're just trying to keep things tuned up. Yeah, it's a little more hands-on, a lot more maintenance, but we're trying to make sure we're getting everything out that colony that we possibly can.
Yeah, one thing I failed to mention, I agree with all that, Greg, is sometimes what I do, if I'm drawing a box of nothing but foundation, I always have 10 frames in that 10 frame box. Obviously 8 frames would be an 8 frame box. However, once the comb is drawn out, I like to use 9 frame spacing. I've got a 9 frame spacer that I got at Man Lake or something years ago. I know Thorn sells them. You can get them in a lot of places, but it's a heavy. I've got an orange one that's plastic, but the metal one works really well. I space them at 9 frame spacing, and what I found is you get fatter frames. I think the overall weight of honey in the box is more. The bees love it. They draw them out thicker, and it's easier to uncap those frames if they're fatter. And then I got some boxes from a guy a few years ago that had 8 frame spacers already in them. And so Jed and Glade and Bracken, anyone who helped harvest, will let you know that some of those 8 frame space boxes, those frames were, they were almost double as thick as the bottom bar of the frames. And those are impressive. And those boxes are so heavy. I don't know. It just seems like there's more honey in there. And so that's one strategy if you want to maximize honey production. If you will, once they're drawn, if you'll space them out a little bit more to 9 frame spacing, I think 9 frame is pretty safe. 8 frame is a little tricky. Sometimes if you're not, I would go with 9 frame first and then maybe play around with 8 frame some in the future if you're kind of new at this thing. But man, it's just, they fill them out so well. So that's another little tip I would give you for maximizing honey production. Plus, if you go with that lower frame spacing, if you go with the lower number of frames, obviously you don't need as many frames to fill your boxes. So once you have, man, we got a thunderstorm outside. You can probably hear it, but
I hear it.
Once it's just right out here outside my window. But once you have the frames drawn out and you start to be able to expand a little bit and you get more boxes, then if you say you have 9 boxes or 10 boxes, you can take a frame out of each and create another super. And so you avoid having to spend money on more frames. And so it just kind of snowballs that way. But when you're new, obviously you can't do that yet. But once you get some comb drawn out, once you kind of gain that momentum, I think we're about to hear some thunder. Maybe not. There it is.
Wow. Called it.
It's just, I mean, it's just, I can see it flashing right outside my window here. I've got the blinds closed, but you can still see it. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to some questions, and go ahead and keep putting in hashtag brucesbees if you want a chance to win a t-shirt here. And we'll just go through the questions here real quick and comments. A lot of these are just comments from folks. Let's just see what we got here. First of all, Brian, I appreciate the super chat. Thanks so much. People don't realize how much that means if we do receive a super chat or super thanks or a super sticker. All those things really, they mean a lot. It helps know that the work that we put into it is worthwhile. So I appreciate it, Brian. We have a comment here from Sam, Mr. Sam Mixon. He says, I think you need to get about 150 more supers for next year for your bees. Sam, you might be right. I don't know if I need 150, but I've got the boxes. I just don't have the comb drawn out. And this year I didn't think our harvest was going to be as good, so I didn't worry about drawing it out early, and I kind of paid for that. But I think we got enough. I think we were in pretty good shape. So, yeah, those bees just, if you guys could have just seen, some of you guys in here did see how full those dang boxes were of honey. They were just, there was no place else to put any honey. They were so full. Thanks for the comment, Sam. Appreciate you. Austin L6 says, I've gotten food grade. So someone was asking about buckets earlier in the comments. And this is a great comment right here, and it actually can become a problem. He says, I've gotten food grade buckets from Lowe's, but they have had several cracks on the bottom and the honey spills. Recommendations on what y'all use or order from. So I've had several people comment on how high I've stacked my boxes, my buckets of honey. And I stack them 5 high in my storage room. And I used to buy all my buckets from Lowe's as well. And I thought they were fine buckets, and they are fine buckets, but I didn't realize that there was a difference between 70 and 90 mil buckets, the heavier duty buckets. And I had, I think, 2 of them that had small cracks in them, but I addressed it before it became too much of a problem. A little bit of honey was like in the lid below it. But now with all the honey I have, I pretty much have to stack them 5 high. There's a solution to that. You can put boards under them, which I've seen some people do, but I just stack them up. But what I do is I make sure I have 90 mil buckets. Mark Zenner says here, he says he gets his buckets from Uline, buy the heavier ones. I assume he probably means 90 mil buckets. Jeff here says, I buy 90 mil buckets from E-Package Supply, made in the USA. Those are the ones I use. And I will tell you this, epackagesupply.com, they are such good people. If you call them, if you need a lot of buckets, they will work with you on price. They'll work with you on shipping. I got a pallet last year and I ordered not enough this year. I ordered 50 buckets and 80 lids this year. And I ended up having to dig into some that I was going to try and get rid of. Some 70 ml buckets I had left. I had to go ahead and use them because I ran out of buckets. I had so much dang honey, but I order from them. They are really good. I think their price is very competitive and fair, and they are 90 ml buckets, and they are tough. The lids, one problem, if you have the 90 ml buckets, but you don't have lids that are tough, then if you stack them up, the lid will just collapse. I actually, my buddy Rusty had some lids just there at the place that were not as tough, not as strong. And one of them actually we had it stacked in the honey room. I didn't realize that it was on the bottom, near the bottom, I guess, or wherever it was. And it started peeling out just in a couple of days. And so my son-in-law caught it. I actually have it in here right now. I'm going to put it it's going to be one of the next ones I put into my bottling tank here. But it's important that you have tough buckets, tough lids, and you can do a lot with them, and they won't tend to crack. But 90 mil buckets with the really strong, heavy-duty lids, I think, is important. I think the ones at Lowe's are fine, or Home Depot or Tractor Supply. 70 mil buckets are fine. That's mostly what they sell, what I've seen, as long as you're not trying to stack them up real high. If you just have them a single level, even 1 or 2 high, that's probably fine. But if you're going to stack them up and put the kind of weight on them I do, you need to get some heavy-duty buckets. They're just tougher and rugged, and they work out well. Thomas here says, never heard the term 90 until a couple of chats ago. Just buy the food grade standard buckets at Tractor Supply. Yeah, Thomas, that's perfectly fine as long as you're not trying to stack them as high as I do. That's what I'm saying. I think they work fine, but just if you're trying to stack them up or do anything that require a lot of tough, heavy duty stuff, then you might pay for it. I have had a couple of the smaller ones crack on me. Let's see. We won't go with that one. That's really not it.
When you're harvesting, 23,000 pounds of honey, everybody, you gotta have strong buckets. You know?
Well, if I was going
About
23,000
time to
pounds,
think about barrels
I
there,
would be
Bruce.
drums. If I was
Yeah.
that much, the reason. Okay, so here's another. All right, I'm gonna address that issue right here and now. Put it to bed. The barrels, I would love to do drums. The problem is, our setup is, we harvest at his place. We're not really set up for drums. We could get set up for drums with pumps and stuff, but then we have to move them to store them, which is doable as well. You have to have the equipment to do that. And those things weigh, I think, 600 plus pounds, 660 to 700 pounds, whatever it is, they weigh a lot. And then in my case, my bottling tank, I store them at the farm. We harvest in Hartford at Rusty's place. I store them at the farm in Newton, and then I have to bottle them up here at my house. So there's no way I could bring 55-gallon drums here to my house in town and get the honey in here. So I would have to pump it from the bucket, from the barrel into buckets and bring it. So what that is, it's a pain in the tail when we first
Logistics.
do it because we do have to haul these buckets around. But once we have them, I don't know if you can see kind of back in the corner here, see all those buckets stacked? I can just put them right there at the wall, and I can just, my bottling tank's just right over here as well. And so I can just carry them from there. I bring them from my storage facility to right here. And then I just, as I need them, I put them in the bottling tank and bottle the honey up. And so it works out well for me. But I do agree, in the future, if I get much bigger, it's just going to have to require, we're going to have to go bigger with the drums and so forth. Greg, I appreciate the super chat. Thanks so much. Hashtag Endure Hive, hashtag Be the Lighthouse, hashtag Brothers Keeper. Appreciate that, man. It means a lot. Grammy says, talking about our experience, what about that orange blossom snacking frame? We found like 2 or 3 frames, and they didn't look like any of the other frames we had. I'm not sure if we ran some through and didn't notice it, but when we uncapped about 2 or 3 of our frames, the honey was as orange could be. It was just orange. Like, it was orange. That's all I can say about it. Like, if you open up an orange and you see the inside, the meat of an orange, it was that color. And I was like, what is that honey? And we stopped everything. Everybody kind of came over and looked at it, and we tasted it. It tasted completely different from everything else we were extracting that day. The spring honey that was mixed in is lighter in color. So it's super sweet flavor. The tallow is a little bit darker and more amber, and it's a kind of a little bit stronger in taste. But this was some of the best honey I've ever tasted, and it was just on just a very few frames. So I think, and Grammy Lisa says orange blossom honey. Maybe they got into some satsuma or orange type bloom somewhere. I have no idea where they got that honey, but it was some of the best honey I think I've ever tasted, at least from my bees. And I like the honey; it's all good, but it was really cool to see those frames. It was so beautiful and it tasted so good. John, he's talking about John Lawler. He said his colonies are massive, but just not filling the boxes. I know it's tough up there, I think, with the flow. That's one thing about that timing, Greg, we talked about. Sometimes it's just hard when you're trying to build up like John is. It's kind of hard sometimes. Keith talking about pulling supers. He says, I like to pull before the supers get completely full. I pulled 5 times thus far, and there will be at least one more. Hard to do if you have hundreds of hives, but works great on my 17 production hives. So that's true. You can kind of watch them and pull as you need to. Mike Berry does a lot of that. He pulls a few boxes at a time. It works out good for him. Question here from Spencer Cox. Do you have any of your infinity frames ready to extract? And if so, how do they do in the extractor? Once again, Spencer, I think they did fine. Nobody said anything about them. I did not see those frames actually go through the line. I was just busy doing other stuff, and they just got extracted. But I'm sure they did perfectly fine. Those things are tough. They're way tougher than anything else I have from a durability standpoint, I think. Glade Sessions from Utah B-Man says, I had a ton of frames needed drawn out this year, so I have a bunch of frames that now have beautiful white comb. Isn't that beautiful too when the bees first draw that comb out? It's just so cool. That's one of my favorite things to see, that white wax, that beautiful. And then the cappings are beautifully and perfectly white as well on that honey. It's just awesome. Okay, we got DC's Bees says, great part of beekeeping. There are so many methods to accomplish your goals. That's true. You guys hop in if you have any comments. I'm just kind of whipping through them here. Solitude Acre says, if the bees are slowly capping the honey cells but still have most of the cells full, can you still pull the honey and dry it yourself? If so, at what point do you know its honey is able to pull? Know it's honey and able to pull the frame. Greg, what do you think about that? Not completely capped, but can you pull it dry it yourself? When do you know it's ready to pull in that situation and not fully capped frame?
And there's plenty of large operators who pull it before it's capped to intentionally put it into a room to pull the moisture out and get it even lower than what it would on the frame itself. I think most folks are going to be targeting right around 17%. So I like the shake test. It's never failed. And matter of fact, we have found that what comb that is open sometimes is actually lower moisture count than the honey behind a capping. So don't let the capping fool you. If you do need to pull it a little early for whatever reason, timing, logistics, you can just, your refractometer is going to be your friend, and don't be afraid to use a dehumidifier in a small room to create some heat and to actually pull the moisture out. So I do not believe at all that honey has to be capped before it's pulled. I think honey the moisture content has to be known what it is when you pull as your target. That way you know what you're dealing with, especially if your plan is to dehumidify it post.
Don't forget, folks, if you want to have a chance to win a Bruce's Bees t-shirt here, one of the first run we've ever done, put in hashtag Bruce's Bees in the comments. We're going to draw that when we get done with these questions here. Solitude acres. So we talk about that. My thoughts are, that kind of piggybacks to another question, Greg. And what I've traditionally done is we use the shake test if we're out pulling honey, especially this summer harvest. The honey, they're done bringing it in. The flow is basically over. We don't want to have to come back in another 3 or 4 weeks and pull again. Odds are they're not going to cap some of that honey anyway. If there's nothing coming in, they may just leave it open, through the winter. If they don't want to spend that extra energy to cap it. And so many times it is ready when it's uncapped. I like to see my boxes 80-90% capped, but we do pull some that isn't capped. But I will take the frame out, turn it sideways, like it's like the cells are facing down, and just shake it. I shake it really hard. And if a couple of drops come out, it's no big deal. But if it just comes out like rain, it's way too wet. But if it doesn't, then you can go ahead and take it. Typically, I too have found that it tends to be fine. It tends to be within an acceptable range if that's the case. However, I will tell you this. This is my next question, and I may be in disagreement with some people on this, but what do you think maximum water content is for the honey to be okay? I know people say ideally 17.5%, at most 18%. What would you say, Greg, would be the highest water count in your honey that would be acceptable?
Good question.
This is controversial now. It's controversial.
So this is where we get into something that's not just as cut and dry as a number. Right. Because the varietal also plays into this in a big way. How much yeast may or may not be in there as well, and how fast it'll ferment, how fast it may or not crystallize as well. For me, I if you can get honey down into the 16 range, it's just much more decadent. The flavor is way more robust, and then the mouth feel is just unparalleled with something that is high 17s, low 18s. I think for the most part, if you're getting low 18s, you may find some things that are in high 16s or low 17s. And if you're doing a batch, it sometimes balances out and you'll be in that 17 range. So Bruce, I don't know that I have a number that I say, oh, if it's 18.4%, I feel like we're safe. I think it is so varietal specific. I couldn't answer that honestly for folks, but Brian, the lower you can get it, the better.
Brian, do you have an opinion on that?
Hang on one second. Let's see there. There we go.
Okay. There you go. That's good.
That's just the typical range that I look at. Now, I've got the little tester.
Refractometer, yeah.
Yeah, the refractometer. I'm forgetting my words here. I'll check it. Like I normally do the shake test. When I see frames that are not capped over, I'll give it a shake. And if nothing moves, then it's like, yeah, it's done. I've never had a problem by doing that. If I've ever tested any, and now I actually had honey come across one time. It's been a couple seasons ago where when I used my refractometer and tested it, like it was very high. It was close to like 20. It was like way high. And I was just like, what in the, and then I got looking into it and they were like, okay, type of source that they got it from, the amount of precipitation that you've gotten. So there were so many different factors. The only thing I did to it, it sat down in the basement next to the dehumidifier for a couple days. I would go down every day, do a little test. When I got it down into my,
range.
into my range, it's fine. So
Yeah. Well, so I have never worried about it that much. I'm just going to be honest. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Holly. Holly just bought a 5-gallon bucket of honey from me online. She's in California, and I shipped it out today.
Wow.
So I appreciate that, Holly. Thank you so much. That's amazing. But I just don't. I've never. I'm gonna knock on my little desk right here. I've never had any ferment on me, and the tallow honey typically is known to be a little more wet. And what we pulled this time was, in large percentage of that was tallow honey. Now our spring honey is actually really thick and it's fairly dry, and it's just probably perfectly right in that range typically. But we did measure. I don't go through and just measure sample throughout the day. Like if I'm in the middle of an extraction and I have 12 or 13 people there, and I'm in the middle of a 9,000 pound extraction, and I come across a frame that's at 18.9. What am I going to do? You know what I mean? I can't just stop the whole operation and just panic. So what we did was we had all the honey stacked in the honey house. I have a dehumidifier. That the room may be 1,000 square feet. I'm not sure if it's much bigger than that. It's not a huge room. Last year I bought a dehumidifier that's good for 4,500 square feet. The room is not sealed, like it does have air flow in and out. So there's a lot of humidity down here, and in there it's humid. When I first took the dehumidifier up, it was 80% in the room that day. But we hooked it up. It was draining through the drain, and it was going out into the ditch out back. And so we just left that thing running for 2 days as we were pulling the honey, bringing it in there. Just left that thing running, and we did at the end of the extraction. Now it was pretty hot and muggy in the room the whole day. We tested one sample of the honey, and it was 18.5%. And so a lot of people will be like, oh my gosh, that honey's no good. But typically the tallow is a little wetter. And I think, like Greg, you said, some of the florals and things. I'm not saying it was all like that. I'm sure it wasn't. We just decided to test at the end of the day. And many years we've never even tested. And so it's always been okay. Now I say that, and I'll have some of it this year that goes bad on me, but I've never had an issue with it. So I think that there is there's almost like I'm not sure how to put this, almost like a competition when people say, I hope I don't step on any toes here, when people say, well, my honey is, did you test your honey? What was your moisture? Did you test your honey? Mine was 15.5%, or mine was 17 point. People, it's like you one up people if yours is a little bit drier or whatever. But my honey's always done well. People have always liked it. It has a good taste to it. The spring honey is thicker, and I personally like the spring honey better, the flavor of it a little bit, but I think we need to be careful. We had a testing at our bee club one night a couple of years ago, and one of the guys brought a refractometer, and people brought their honey. And a friend of mine who was kind of new in beekeeping, his tested out a little bit on the high end. It wasn't horrible. It may have been 18.5 to 19%. And he had harvested his honey, and he was so upset about that. He thought, oh my gosh, my honey's no good. But I think we need to be careful about that. And I do agree that it's best if it's down that, probably 16.5 to 17 is perfect. But I know there's a lot of controversy, a lot of differing opinion on this. And I do think down here it's very difficult. If you just dehumidify it, and if you get it in a closed room and you seal it off, blow fans on it with the dehumidifier for days, you can probably get this tallow honey down to the 16.5 range. But my honey has done fine, and it's usually up. I think usually it measures, when we measured it before, in the 17s and low 18s, which is kind of what it was this time, and it's always turned out okay. So off my soapbox, and I appreciate everyone for being here tonight. Let's just finish out these comments real quick here, see what else we have going on. This doesn't really have to do with honey here, but we'll go ahead and address it. just real quickly, anyone who's had Apame hives, this might be a good question for Stan Gore. My phone just died over here, so I can't look at the comments live anymore because I'm looking at the starred ones here. But for those who have Apame hives and traditional hives, any difference in this heat wave? Anybody notice that? Brian, Greg, I know you guys both run traditionally wood boxes.
Nope.
I just have a nuke. I don't have any standard full size Apames anymore that I have bees in because they don't work well on my pallets. And so I do use the Apame nukes a little bit. But Stan, if you could chime in a little bit if you have any comments on that, any noticeable difference in the wooden boxes Apames. I'm sure there is a difference, maybe. There should be, but my bees do fine in the heat. Now they do beard more, I think, probably in this heat than the Apames, but they figure it out. And I think there are some advantages to Apame. I think definitely it's a good thing to have, but it's just doesn't work too well for my operation.
Yeah, we use those, Bruce. We sell them. We've got a bunch of them out here. And what I found is, Brian, what are you showing us there?
I've got in that row, I've got 2 Apames, I've got wooden hives, and then I've got the 3D printed one. So I've got a couple different setups there. When I go over during these hot days like that, there's absolutely no difference from one hive to another with activity. I don't see any additional bearding, nothing like that. It's just steady activity, the same down the road.
Yeah, ours are getting to that. Some of them are getting so populated that I think I'm going to say something, and I'm just going to share a rogue thought that I had today. Okay, I'm cruising through, and I'm going through, and I'm adding queens to queenless colonies and moving things forward, and it is the air quality today was just so poor the first part of the day. When you look out of the ridges all have that Smoky Mountain blue. The air is thick. It's hard to breathe, no matter the temperature. And so when that happens, I was seeing bees in single boxes that were underneath of the hive. And I'm thinking, what in the world's going on? I was excited, like, okay, wow, there must just be jammed. They must just be absolutely packed out. Crack the lid, and it's like all the bees are outside of the box. They're not even inside of the box. Some of them even had a super. Like there was plenty of headspace. There was plenty of cubic inches inside of there. But I think that sometimes we see bearding. It's beyond just humidity and temperature. I think it can get into air quality issues too for them. Yes, they breathe differently. I understand that. But what I notice, especially like here in the learning yard, we've got wood hives. We have the Apame upgrade kits, which have the Apame's top insulated cover with the dual feeder and then their bottom board. And I'm not seeing a difference in bearding. And then on our Apame hives, I'm not seeing that there is less bearding on Apame than there is wood. Sometimes I thought I was seeing more bearding on the Apames than the wood hives, but that is genetic specific. I think because our bees are propolis monsters, every crack on the Apame bottoms and that vented top, they glue it. They close all of that down. So maybe different strains of bees who don't propolize as much. Maybe there's more airflow for them. I also think you have to get into, I think where Apames really shine are probably into higher heat climates. Just where this further south, where it's beating, just dog beating down sun all the time. Like maybe where Stan Gore's at down in Texas, maybe there would be a significant difference for him. But where we're at, it's kind of mild in between. I'm not seeing a whole lot of that, of it being a difference.
Yeah, I mean, my bees beard. I mean, right now, since I condensed them down with this honey flow, they're just like covering the entire boxes up. But it's okay. They get through it every year. They get through it somehow.
Yeah.
They know
freeloaders. They're like the old chickens who aren't laying eggs. They're just out there freeloading. They're on the porch, just hanging out. Just doing their thing.
Speaking of chickens, I'm gonna hopefully get a video out. I think I actually posted them on my story, but they're probably not on there anymore. But we were at Rusty's house. He's got free range chickens out there. And while we were loading the buckets, those chickens were walking all over to the truck. And they were walking all around, just kind of. And when you're watching chickens walking around on time lapse, it's pretty funny to see. But anyway, Jed asked, and we kind of already asked this. He says, "How much should I worry about honey being capped in order to extract?" I'm in Utah, so I'm not super worried about water content. Jed, I think it's okay if you do the shake test like we did and check it. If you check the water content, I bet it'll be in Utah. I bet it's down there in the 16.5% that Stan was talking about. I meant it's a desert out there, so I imagine it's pretty dry out there. I don't imagine you have a whole lot to worry about, but it never hurts to check it and see. You can get a refractometer for a very reasonable price.
They're cheap, yeah.
So Keith, in answer to that question, this was much earlier in the chat. He said, "I like extracting uncapped honey, so much easier. All about the moisture, not the cappings." That's true. Thanks, Keith, for that comment. Oh, let's see. This might be a question from DC's. We've got a few questions left for getting there. If you're returning wet, deep frames to a hive, would you place them in the middle of the brood chamber for efficiency and speed? I don't know that it matters that much. Do you think, Greg? I think if you're talking about just putting them back in the hive.
Well, I guess there's a couple ways you could think about it. It's a great question. I kind of think of what is the use of this particular frame. Can it go anywhere? Can it live for brood? Is it living only for nectar? Is it mostly living as a food storage part of the hive? I'd rather keep the comb as clean as possible. So if it's a nice, beautiful, cleaner wax, I wouldn't want to put that down in the brood box just to keep the filth off of it. Would be the big thing. It is highly likely that I will make a gazillion more mistakes this year and the year following and the year following. And I know the wet super one can be a big problem for folks. If we are typically not waiting to pull our honey at a dearth, where there's nothing going on. If you wait until you're into a dearth to pull honey, you have a lot more considerations, I think, to be worrying about. When we're pulling at the end of a flow, it's not quite as big a deal. I got no problem putting those wet supers back on. But if there's nothing for anybody to eat and you've got this just fresh meat out there, that can cause you some problems. Otherwise, I got no problem throwing that box right back on the colony, letting them finish it up. And then also, if they don't make an extra storage box, then they're just working towards winter and the box stays on.
Yeah, we after the spring harvest, we put the supers right back on, or I do, because we know the tallow is coming, or we hope it is. And then this last harvest, we go ahead and put it on the trailers for storage. And well, not for storage yet, but we put it on there. And I like to stack them. I learned this last year, I think, or the year before. I did it this way the first time. We stack them on the trailer vertically. So if it rains, they don't fill up with water, because down here it rains quite a bit in the summertime. And so that way, when you go to store your supers, you don't have to try and shake all the water out and end up with mold and everything, which the bees clean up, but still it's a mess. And so, but what we do is we take them out of the honey house. What we did this past week, we take them out of the house, put them right on a trailer, set them out away from the honey house, away from Rusty's bees. And we went out there Monday night. His bees were in there trying to clean that out. Then we took them to the farm up there and parked them away from my bees, a good, I don't know, quite a ways, hundreds of yards away, kind of between two of my bee yards, between the cell tower bee yard and my bees at the farm, right there next to my brother's house, which is kind of probably a little more than, in the middle, sort of. And he's got a pole barn there, so he parked them under there, and those bees are cleaning them out. And then once they get good and cleaned out and dry, and once I have a chance to store them, then I store them. But a lot of commercial guys store them wet. But yeah, as far as your question, DC, though, like Greg said, if it's a honey super situation, you can put them back on there and they'll clean them up. It doesn't matter if it's right in the middle. I think if you put wet honey supers on the top of, you got 3 frames of foundation, you put that on, the bees are going to go up there and clean it up. They want to get up there. They'll clean it up very quickly and efficiently. So it doesn't have to be in the middle of I don't think it has to be in the middle of brood or real close to the bees for them to clean it up. They'll find it if they want it, put it that way. Brian, if you have any questions, just chime in. Let's see. I don't know that we need a couple comments from Keith and Brian here. We talked about this a little bit. Keith says, "I under super till I'm tired, then I over super." That's exactly kind of what that's what a lot of people do. And then Brian said kind of the same thing. Brian says, keep the same. I under super if I have energy. If I feel lazy, it goes on top. So honestly, it doesn't matter that much. People just kind of do what they prefer to do. Jed talking about the infinity frames. I'm sorry, not Jed. Glade. Let's see. Yeah, Glade said, Jed, I like the sturdiness of the infinity frames. I didn't care for the extra weight. And Jed said he really liked them. So, yeah, they are sturdy. They do weigh a little more, but it didn't bother me too much. But they are definitely heavier because they're so much sturdier than your standard frames. Lisa Grammys, she says, great times, great friends. And that is true. Once again, the name of the video was Hard Work, Fellowship, and Fun. And, if anytime Lisa's involved, all those three things are going on because she likes to have a good time, but she's willing to work hard and she likes to have fun. So, and she loves the fellowship. So appreciate the super chat there, Grammy. Appreciate that, Lisa. See this question real quickly. Favorite place to buy frames? This is from Clark's Bees and such.
I mean, that's easy.
I know it's
Image
easy.
Farm, right?
I think it's easy. And what kind of frames do you have, Greg?
We prefer the Premier Pura frame with the Puracell, the top bars. It is without a question the beefiest wood frame on the market. It's got a 3/4 inch top bar, a 1/2 inch side bar. It's got an appropriate corner. It's actually joined with meat in between, and they've taken it a step farther. The bottom corners are also chamfered, so if that is running through extraction equipment, it's not going to get hung up or chewed up. It is specifically designed in collaboration, at least think tank collaboration with Cowan and Cook and Beals to make sure that it goes through equipment without getting chewed up. So I love those frames. Also, the top corners are rounded off. I know that sounds silly, but if you've ever used I don't mean anything by this, but just generic, basic Amish top bar where it's just a square, sharp corner, I mean, it will peel the skin off of your finger and your thumb if you use them a lot. But the Premiers are rounded. So it's just they're way more comfortable, way easier on your hands, especially with high repetitions. And then I love their foundation. I use nothing but double wax, and I prefer just the black double waxed. The bees, I've never had any trouble with the bees drawing that out. And I could go on and on and on, but if you want to find more information about that, we have tons of videos and interviews with the owner, Jeff Johnson, about what actually makes their product different. And you can go to our website, naturesimagefarm.com, to talk up. If you want to see a lot of the things we've talked about tonight, you can see them there, including the Premier Pura Frame and Puracell foundations.
Brian, do you have similar thoughts on that? Any additional thoughts on the frames?
Look at that.
Can't hear you.
Everyone's just hanging out in suspense.
Brian, you're muted.
You'd think that I would know.
Is this your first time, sir?
It is. So I was going through cleaning, everybody knows, like, before the season got busy, I was cleaning a lot of frames out, doing all this and that. And I was looking at some of the foundation that I had, and I scraped it off, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, why even try with some of the foundation? So it literally, some of my very old and just some of the foundation that I got from companies that literally I've been trying and trying and trying to get them to draw out, and they never did. It went right in the trash. I got a box of some foundation for deep frames the other day, and I get a box tomorrow of some medium foundations, and it's coming from Premier. So now I'll tell you, the only other frames that I will purchase moving forward are those infinity frames. I'm basically going to stagger in my operation, but I don't think I'm going to use the infinity frames in my supers. I think I'm just going to stagger here and there into my deeps, just because I like the beefiness. I like how they feel, things like that. I've had a number of deep frames where, and it's no fault, mostly of the frames. It's those that put them together. Normally it's me. And then when I'm trying to get them apart, they bust apart, things like that. I'm pulling the top rails of them off, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah. So It's mainly going to be those two companies. It's just Premier is probably going to be 90%, and then the Infinities will be the other.
I tend to agree. I have had I've used Pureco in the past. I love Pureco frames; they're fine. I like the all plastic ones, to be honest. I haven't had an issue with them, except for they've got to be well waxed. I think the number one thing to me is how well waxed they are. A lot of people wax their frames even if they're new before they put them in the hives. I have not found that to be necessary with the Pure frames or those Infinity frames. Man, they drew them out like crazy. So, and then with my Pureco that I've gotten that were triple waxed, they jump right on them. But now I think what I found out though is if they sit in a box for 3 or 4 years, and they're just standard waxed, I probably should wax them first. And I've got some I'm just going to probably incorporate in my operation just because I have them. I've already paid for them, but I will be probably primarily ordering from Pure Frame. This is at least as far as I know now. Unless I'm planning on probably ordering the Pure Frame from Premier and may try some more Infinity frames in the future. But I've got a source for those Pure frames. Get a pretty good deal from Mr. Burns there. So if I order the boxes that I plan to, moving forward, which are going to primarily be the Endura Hive boxes, is my goal, then I'll probably just order them with the frames to go in them most of the time. So that's kind of my goal. Let's see. We got a few more things. Let's see. We already talked about that. Once again, Hollyhawk, American Bee Lady, thanks so much for the really nice super chat there. We appreciate you being on here, and you've been on here pretty much all night tonight for the chat. We appreciate you. And Holly lives out in California, and she often will just reach out to me, and she's got some good ideas and things and suggestions for me. And she also bought a bucket of my honey. So I really appreciate you, Holly, and we appreciate you just for being a part of the community. Of course, our good buddy Brian Lee, he says, quite congratulations on your harvest this year, Bruce. Outstanding. Thanks so much, Brian. Brian was on a cruise over in the Mediterranean, I think, while we were pulling honey this year, so he wasn't able to join us. But he's been down and helped out pulling that honey a couple of times, and we just appreciate you. Brian is he's become one of my closest friends. He's just a great man, and if you haven't met Brian, you've missed out because Brian's just a great guy. Thanks for that super chat, Brian. Question here, and for those who are still in the chat, put a hashtag brucesbees to win a t-shirt we're going to give away here in just a minute. Greg, when will you have Endura Hive Deeps with the rough inside available online? I guess the Propola box is what he's talking about.
Yeah, we've got a bunch to wax dip there coming up. It's that time of year where everything just stacks up on itself, and then folks are buying equipment like crazy. So just first, thanks so much for the stream team community, folks for listening to this, for going to Nature's Image Farm for your boxes and your frames. The Propola Hive, as everybody knows, is one of the most popular boxes on the market right now for good reason. Not going to take time to talk about that now, but because of that, they are very difficult to keep in stock. We dip them skids, semis at a time, and they're hard to keep in stock. So Trace Baird, thanks for your interest in that. If you want to get right in on the next round of those, go to our website, hit the About Us, shoot us a message. We can notify you as soon as they are back in stock to make sure that you get them, and we can get them right out to you. So they will be right back in stock very soon.
Stan asked, what do Infinity frames cost a box? I saw one at the bee meeting. Dang, those things are beefy. You're right, Stan. I ordered a box of them, and they were great. It's really they are impressively strong, and so it might be worth just ordering some to try out. But what is it, 21st Bee, Brian, the website? What do you go to find that?
Yeah.
I don't know what the price is exactly.
So I will say he's very close to having his website done. Currently, he has it so like you have to go onto his website and you submit the information. They send you an invoice. So it's a little bit of a process. But he's probably a week away. I'd say probably within a week, he'll have the website out, and then you can just order right off of there. So
yeah, they are more expensive for sure, but it's kind of like the Endura Hive boxes. You buy them, and they'll last you probably for maybe as long as you're keeping bees. They literally are built that tough. Until you hold them in your hands and actually, and the thing too about them, Stan, I know this is super important to you. He talked about you may want to go watch that video with Brian. I'm not sure if you were on that night when we had Michael on the video with Brian on the stream team 3 weeks ago, but they actually order wax in from Europe, and he has a different way of spraying the wax on there. He says that's a little bit different, and they look a little different than your standard frames when you get them. They have a little bit of a different feel to them. But literally, like in 5 days, my bees had them, and this was it was during a flow, but kind of as the flow was starting to wind down, they had them within 5 days. The middle 8 frames were largely drawn out, and then within I think 19 days, they had enough nectar and honey stored in it to harvest a little bit for our harvest. And so they just really are. They're pretty impressive, but I like the pure frames too. That's probably what I'll order most of for because of cost and also because I like them just fine. But I was impressed.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, if you think about we could go down this rabbit hole and we could talk the next half an hour about frames, but there's 2 common factors. Like I try and look at this. I got balloons now. I look at the common factors. So you've got Premier, who they're very selective in their wax. So they use very specific wax with their products. And then you've got 21st Bees. He uses very specific wax.
Yeah.
So they're very selective in their product, and they produce a good product. So I've never had an issue with either of them. So.
Yeah. Anyway, well, we are to the point now. We probably should have drawn earlier, but we have the T-shirt here. Real quick, you got like 30 seconds to put hashtag brucesbees in if you haven't yet. We got the T-shirt here. It's black. My first run ever of any type of merch that I give away or sell. Most of us can give them away, but I have had some hats. I've got some hats that Brian Lee made for me actually, but it was kind of cool. This is the front of the shirt right here. You got the American flag on the sleeve, on the left sleeve, and then of course on the back, you have Bruce's Bees right here. Pretty cool looking shirts. They turned out pretty good. A friend of mine at church made them for me. So, let's go ahead and spin it. How many we got on there? About 70 something, 75 or so?
75, yeah. 76. All right.
Spin. Now listen, whoever wins this, you got to email me here in the next few seconds, pretty soon, or we're going to need to, got to make sure we have someone on here. Stan. Stan's on here.
Look at that.
Stan, that's cool, man.
Stan the man.
It's rigged.
Stan, email me at bruce@brucesbees.com with your size, and I'll get one out to your size and address and your information. I'll get one to you. Appreciate that, Stan. Man, Stan is one of the best supporters of the stream team of this. Stan's just a great guy. He has Texas Friendly Beekeepers. For those who may not be familiar with that Facebook group, where at Texas Friendly Beekeepers, they don't allow any negativity or trolls on there. Stan is not afraid to kick them out. And it's a great forum to be able to ask any question you want to ask and to learn about bees. You don't have to be from Texas to be on there. And I've learned a lot on Texas Friendly Beekeepers, and Stan does a great job. He's a good Christian man who really is all about, he's got the heart of a teacher, and he's a good man. So appreciate you, Stan. I actually have a Facebook group called Alabama Friendly Beekeepers, which got a hat around here somewhere, Alabama Friendly Beekeepers hat, but oh, here it is. Actually, our logo is very similar to it's got an Alabama flag on there, but I kind of got the general idea from it from Stan's. Oh yeah, Greg's got one too. Brian, do you have one of those?
No.
I guess you didn't come down.
Oh, burnt.
Anyway, but
yeah.
But we've actually we actually have the same rules as Texas Friendly Beekeepers on our group, and so because Stan's been such a good example to me. So Stan, I'm glad you won that T-shirt. We'll get it out to you, but send me your size and your address. Also send your wife's size. I'll send you one for her too. Just great people. So,
they were Lighthouse Award recipients as well. That'd be a fun video to get out later on this year too. Great folks.
Oh
yeah. All right, yeah. Tom is like, Brian, ouch. Yeah, need to get you a hat, but I'll try and get you one.
Hats. I don't have shirts.
Anyway, but Stan, this is our first run of these T-shirts. They turned out good. All the people who helped with the harvest got one, and I haven't even worn mine yet. I just been giving them out to other people, so I need to put it on. But it's been kind of fun. We've been on here now for 2 hours and 3 minutes. We still have 160 people in here. Appreciate everyone for being on here. Real quickly, let's run around the horn here, see what's going on with you. You guys are still in the middle of your season. My honey season is wound down, but now in reality, real beekeeping begins right here. But Brian, or I tell you what, I'll go ahead, then Brian, and then Greg, you bring it on home for us, okay? So down here in Alabama, we have the honey supers off. We got the buckets stored. I still have to store the boxes, which I hate to do. It's such a pain, but it's something that has to be done. But more critically, I need to get into my hives, see how they're doing, dig into the brood, see what the health of the colonies is, because I haven't been in the brood boxes on these for probably 2 to 3 months since we've had the honey coming in, at least a couple of months. A few of them I have, if I was just checking them for whatever reason, but most of them haven't been in probably since late March, even April in some cases, or even usually probably April, most of them, but maybe anyway. Whenever I started stacking honey supers on, lots of times I don't go back in them for a while, and so the bee inspector did do me a solid. He went out and went to all my bee yards and took samples, mite samples, and looked at the overall health of the colonies. Monday and yesterday, he went to all my bees, and he didn't check them all, but he took some good samples out of them. And I do have some mites in them, which I expected. A lot of them are just fine, but some of them are over the threshold. A few of them are way over the threshold, so I got to get some treatments in. But this weekend, I'm going to help Rusty with his honey harvest, and so it's going to probably be the following weekend before I can get the treatments in. I hope it's not too late. I'm going to just doing the best I can. So that's what I have coming up. I've got videos of the honey harvest. I'm going to try and get some out that are a little more detailed. If you haven't seen my video, I think we're going to show it again right here in just a minute. But if you haven't seen it, or if you want to share it around to folks, my YouTube video that I just posted yesterday, once again, it's about this community, the Stream Team community, the beekeeping community, the Texas Friendly Beekeepers community. There's the overall positive, let's be the lighthouse to those around us type of community. So check that video out on Bruce's Bees, my most recent video, where I am going to show it here in just a minute to close out this video. But really, we're just trying to go into the most difficult, and this is where you really kind of find out what kind of beekeeper you are this time of the year here. It's hot, humid, the bees aren't happy, it's hard on the beekeepers, it's just really tough, but just keep pressing on, do the best we can. I usually lose some this time of the year. July, August is tough. I have a hard time with it, but usually we get them built back up and swing it back around, so we have a good year the next year. So it's just kind of hang on for the ride and keep moving forward. Brian, what do you have coming on the next few days?
It's check the colonies, maintain space. The smaller ones that I have, just build them up. I think it's going to be sometime next week. I actually had a talk the other day, probably about a half an hour or so. I spent on the phone with the guy that created hex hives. So awesome. I'm gonna meet with him, and then his dad actually did the CAD designs and everything like that. So I'm gonna toss some ideas at them. I've got some different ideas for that product, but it's fun. We all know I like to tinker with things. That was going to be my only kind of side project this year, just because this year is dedicated to rebuilding. But the colonies, they're looking good. I just want to keep rebuilding them, keep the yard moving in the positive direction. So I do have, if I lean this way some, I can see right over there, there's an incubator with a couple cells that I think maybe when I cut them out, they were probably just capped because I cut them on, was it Monday maybe? I don't know, whatever day I was over there, I forget. Now what's going to happen is tomorrow is my wife's birthday, and they're going to emerge tomorrow, probably about 2-3 o'clock, and then we go to dinner at 6. So I'll have to fandangle something, but I'm just using those just to boost numbers, just so that I have extra queens if I run into any situations. I have like a backup plan D, things like that. But it's just, it's fun, really. I'm enjoying how the yard looks. I can look out there now that the colonies look really good. So it's just a fun time to be a beekeeper.
Yeah, it is. We're a month or two ahead of you guys, so our fun time is kind kind of over now as of this past weekend. Greg, why don't you tell us what's going on up at Nature's Image Farm and then close it on out for us?
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone tuning in tonight for another Stream Team Beekeeping Chat. 3.5 years in, and somehow we can still just keep rambling on about bees over 2 hours. No problem. It's a lot of fun seeing all of our seasons just kind of change and go through all those motions for us here at the farm. We've got supers on. We're still stacking some. We're guarded with how big the flow is going to be. So the name of the game for us right now is just to kind of monitor these supers. Is it time to pull them? Is it time to can we stack them a little bit longer? But I can assure you this, when it's time to pull those, we're going to have a lot of fun this year, showing off some of the absolute best equipment on the market, made in the USA equipment, to process that equipment. So I'm sure you guys know where I'm going with that, and I'll save all that fun for later. But that's what we're doing. It's God's been good. It's been the season has really turned a corner for us, and the bees are building. They're starting to really put some honey away, and we're trying to manage that on top of we cut into our stock to make all of our nukes, and now we're just getting those requeened, getting those split out, and trying to get all of our numbers where we want to be. For the winter, we're trying to get to that number here in the next 30 to 45 days and just be done, just build up from there. So that's kind of what we're doing as far as the bee work goes. Of course, grafting and queen ring and those things. I've got I'm very excited about an in-person interview tomorrow. I've got somebody who's traveling out of state to come visit with me here at the farm. And we're going to talk about something that is absolutely 100% extremely highly, not even arguably, but it is very controversial. And we're going to get into mRNA discussions. It's going to be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about that. So I'll kind of leave you hanging on that. Working on a video right now showing how we use one of our favorite products, Honey Be Gone, and a fume board to pull our honey off quick, easy, effective way. So we've got those products live on our website right now, as well as some of the Maxent honey equipment. So a lot of things going in a great direction this year. Looking forward to some a cool off in the upper 80s, low 90s in the next week in between rainstorms and things like that. So, wherever you are at in the country, wherever you're at with your bees, it's the time of year where we really got to just be mindful of the choices that we make, and know that right now, most folks, if we're honest with ourselves, we are very soonly are going to be building for the wintertime. So be mindful of that with how far you're stretching out your resources. What are you trying to accomplish with your bees? I really hope that you have a plan in place, because if you fail to plan, you can definitely plan to fail. Fellas, next week, let's see. I ask this every time. I just talked to Brian. It's mine. Okay, I was going to try to remember. All right, next Wednesday, 8 p.m., the stream team will be on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. Just looking at the next week from here until then, there's going to be so many incredible things happening here. There's going to be a lot to talk about then. So from all of us here at the stream team, we just really appreciate all of your support. We love you guys. Thank you so much for everything that you do for us. And I just want to leave you with this last thought. Mark 8, verse 36, for what would it profit a man to gain the whole world but lose his own soul? Until next week, we'll remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
It's going to be the greatest ending.
Oops, what I do? Did I mess it up?
Greatest ending ever.
No other ending like it.
Hey, Brian. Sorry about that. Hold on.
All other endings They don't
we
even
go.
compare to this.
There we go.